This is a video for Year 7 students focusing on negative numbers, one of the 4 operations. And often when we are considering negative numbers, it's useful to draw a number line. And we define numbers to the right of 0 as positive, and numbers to the left of 0 as negative. So we're going to begin at -2, which is here, and we're going to jump 8 spaces to the right. And if we jump 8 spaces to the right, 1 space, 2 spaces, 3 spaces, 4 spaces, 5 spaces, 6 spaces, 7 spaces, 8 spaces, we arrive at +6. And it's not necessary to write the positive in, but it's not wrong to do that. You can probably work out the next one without drawing a number line, but let's be consistent and draw our number line. Let's use red this time. So you can have a 0. So we have +3. So we begin here, and we need to move. Let's just write these in. We need to decide which direction we're going to move. So we can take this here as a multiplication. So here we are multiplying a +1 by a -9. Just pretend there's a little 1 here. So we should know from our rules for negative numbers, and let's just write them down. Got a positive times a positive is a positive. Got positive times a negative is a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. And we've got negative times a negative is a positive. So here we have a positive multiplied by a negative, which gives a negative. Okay, so we are going in the left direction. So we're going to jump 9 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if we count the spaces, we end up at that. If we count the spaces, we end up at -6. So it's a little bit difficult to draw all the numbers when we start at -85. So we can begin our number line at -85. This is the positive direction, negative direction. So we move in 1 space to the left, because we can rewrite that using our rules for negative numbers as -1, and we arrive at -86. Okay, so pause the video and see if you can have a go at these, and then I'll go over the solutions. Okay, so hopefully you've done that now. Let's have a look at rewriting these. So we've got a negative multiplied by a negative. Let's rewrite the positive times a positive is a positive. Negative times a positive is a positive. We've got a positive times a negative is a negative. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So we can rewrite this as negative 7 plus 2. We can rewrite this as negative 2 plus 5. We can rewrite this as negative 7 plus 3 plus 2. And we need to remember that when we have a negative and a bracket, that means multiply. That is the same as multiply. A negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. So now that we've rewritten these, let's work out the answers. So we start at negative 7 and we move 2 spaces to the right and we arrive at negative 5. We've rewritten this. We start at negative 2 and we move 5 spaces to the right and we arrive at 3. Okay, so this one we need to do 2 sums to calculate the entire result. So we start at negative 3 and we move 3 spaces to the right, that is negative 4, and then we move another 2 spaces to the right to arrive at negative 2. Now here we just use our rules of negative numbers. We got a negative multiplied by a positive, which is a negative, and 2 5s are 10. Here we have a negative multiplied by a negative, which gives a positive. 2 6s are 12. Now, the rules for division are exactly the same as the rules for multiplication. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And just to make you remember, we can write that down. Let's write that in green. So we've got a positive divided by a positive gives a positive. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So we've got a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, so let's do this one first. We've got a negative times a negative, which is a positive. 4 times 10 is 40, multiplied by another negative. So we've got a positive multiplied by a negative, which is a negative. 1 times 4 is 4. Then we simply add the zeros. So that concludes the video on negative numbers. And the trick is to decide which way you are moving on the number line and dealing with the sign of the final answer. So for example, you can pause the video and have a go at doing this. Negative 3, negative, negative 7. So if we were to consider a number line for this question, we begin at negative 3 and we need to decide how we're going to deal with these double negatives. Well, that is the same as negative 1 multiplied by negative 7, and using our rules of negative numbers here, that gives a positive. So we are moving 7 spaces to the right. If that was -7, we'd be moving 7 spaces to the left. If we jump 7 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're going to arrive at +4. So that concludes the video. The trick to being successful in the computation of negative numbers is to do lots of examples to gain fluency.